It's a P.O.P.
U-U-I-Z.
It's a P.O.P.
U-U-I-Z.
It's a P.O.P.
U-U-I-Z.
Who down with P.O.P.?
U-U-I-Z. Hey!
Some noise. It's time to dance, clap your hands, don't stand still. Now let me hear you lose your voice. Come on.
Listen up.
Let's go.
Listen up, we got a reason why we're singing. Who I wanna be.
Hey Connect Kids, welcome to your service. I'm Amy, and today's kind of a big deal. Do you know why? That's right, because it's Father's Day. Now for those of you who have forgotten about Father's Day, it's not too late to make them a really sweet card. Or do something to help them out around the house. And wish your dad, your uncle, your grandfather, and anyone else who's really special in your life a happy Father's Day. So I want to take the chance to say Happy Father's Day to my dad. Many of you know him as Pastor Nick, but he's my dad. Happy Father's Day. I also want to say Happy Father's Day to my husband, Pastor Yanni, because he is an amazing father. So happy Father's Day, Yanni. Did you guys know that Pastor Yanni's real name isn't actually Yanni? It's a nickname. His real name is János, which means John in Hungarian. In case you didn't know, he was born and raised in a different country called Hungary. And so Yanni is his nickname, but I bet you thought it was his name. Do you guys have any nicknames? When my parents named me, my mom said they were really careful to pick a name that could not be made into a nickname. Amy's pretty short, isn't it? But I know many of you guys have nicknames. In fact, some of your family members probably even kind of have two names. Or maybe they've changed their name. And this happens sometimes. And sometimes it's cultural, and sometimes it's for an important reason. Like maybe there's something special that made their life change. Maybe they want to change their name to Joy because God has given them such joy. So today we are talking about a man whose name was changed. It actually happens more than you think in the Bible, but this actually happens quite a bit. But today we're talking about a man whose family gave him the name Simon, but Jesus changed his name to Peter. Watch this.
Stories of the Bible. Jesus calls Peter. This is Jesus,
Heyo!
who is the Son of God and the Savior of the world. Jesus grew up in Nazareth
Hey, Jesus!
and was baptized by John in the Jordan River. Jesus began teaching about God's love and healing people of their sickness. One day, John saw Jesus walking by and told the people around him that Jesus was the Lamb of God. One of the people standing with him was Andrew, whose brother was Simon, who would later be known as Peter. Andrew went to find his brother and said, "We have found the Christ."
Whoa! Really? Come on!
Simon went with Andrew and met Jesus.
Uh-huh. I'm Simon.
Jesus looked at Simon and said, "Your name is Simon, son of John,
Yes, it is.
but you will be called Peter."
Okay.
On another day, Jesus was walking along the shore of the Sea of Galilee, and lots of people crowded around him to hear what he had to say.
Oh, hello. Well, okay.
Jesus noticed two empty boats, for Andrew and Peter had left them and were washing their nets. Jesus stepped into one of the boats
Hey, Peter.
and asked Peter to take him out into the sea.
Aye, aye.
So he sat in the boat and taught the crowds from there. When he had finished speaking, he said to Peter, "Now go out where it is deeper and let down your nets to catch some fish." But Peter said, "We worked hard all last night and didn't catch a thing. But if you say so, I'll let the nets down again." And this time their nets were so full of fish, they began to tear.
Whoa!
They called to some other fishermen for help,
Hey, help!
and soon both boats were filled with fish. When Peter realized what happened, he fell to his knees before Jesus and said, "Oh Lord, please leave me. I'm such a sinful man." Jesus replied to Peter, "Don't be afraid. Come, follow me, and I will show you how to fish for people."
Really? Really?
And as soon as they landed, they left their nets and followed Jesus. So Simon Peter became one of Jesus' 12 disciples and followed his friend Jesus throughout his time on earth.
So, cool video, Thanks to Saddleback for all these awesome videos that they've allowed us to use for free during this time of at-home church. Simon Peter, or Peter, as you've probably heard him called, has a very big part in the New Testament. In fact, this story that you saw in the video of him being called by Jesus to be a disciple is in all 4 Gospels: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And we know that the Gospels are stories about Jesus' life, which means that they're found in the New Testament. Today, the one that we're going to read is from Luke chapter 5, verses 1 to 11, okay? Luke chapter 5, verses 1 to 11. Now, you saw in the video, Jesus had been going around and teaching, and he was gathering a following, okay? There was a lot of people saying, well, we got to hear from this guy, and so they followed him. And one day, Jesus is walking, and he sees 2 empty fishing boats on the side of the water, and he realizes it's probably smart to go into the fishing boats to teach. So he asks the local fisherman, and the fisherman, Peter, says, sure, I'll take you out. And Jesus goes on out, and he does his teaching. Now, what you maybe don't know is that Peter had probably been fishing all night long, had just spent hours cleaning his nets, and was probably exhausted. But hey, it's Jesus, right? And so he went out, and he let Jesus teach him his boat. When Jesus finishes teaching, he says this to Peter, and this is in Luke chapter 5, verse 4. When he, Jesus, had finished speaking, he said to Simon Peter, now go out to where it is deeper and let down your nets to catch some fish. Peter didn't ask him for this. Jesus knew that Peter needed fish. He knew Peter was a fisherman because he owned a fishing boat. And Jesus knows that Peter needs fish, and he wants to help him. Guys, the first truth I realized from this passage is that Jesus knows our needs and he cares. Jesus knows your needs, and he knows my needs. And we always say, take it to God in prayer, because he does want us to bring our needs to him. But I want you to know that he knows your needs. In fact, he often knows them before you even know them. Now, he says this, and this is how Simon replies. This is the next verse, verse 5. Master, Simon replied. Remember, Simon's Peter. We worked hard all last night and didn't catch a thing. But if you say so, I'll let the nets down again. Now, when they were fishing, they had their nets. They didn't use fishing rods, they used nets. And I don't know about you, but have you ever experienced when you leave something in the water a lot? It kind of gets like slimy and gross, so it's important that you clean it. So fishermen would spend a long time cleaning their nets after fishing to keep them in good shape. This wasn't just an easy job like, oh, I'll just throw it in the laundry machine. It took time and effort. And so Peter had been fishing all night. He hadn't caught anything in the same waters Jesus was taking him to. He had just spent time cleaning his net. It wasn't just like, it doesn't hurt to try again. It was, if I do this, it's going to add hours to my day. And I already know there's no fish here because I tried all night. But Peter says, you know what? I'll do it because Jesus is asking. The thing I learned from this, guys, is that we need to be obedient to what God calls us to do. Sometimes he asks us to do things that don't make sense, or sometimes they just are more work. And it's easy for us to say, I've already tried that, or it's too much work. But here's the thing. A lot of times when God is answering our prayers or giving into our needs, he does so in a way that involves us. It involves some work. And here for Peter, that meant putting his nets down. And I wonder what that means for you and I. Guys, when we have needs, when we bring our prayer requests to God, sometimes we just act like he is a vending machine. You know what I'm talking about? You walk up to the vending machine full of chocolate or pop, and you make a decision on what you want. And you put your money in and you make your selection. It's kind of like, dear God, I want a good grade on my test. Or dear God, I want my mom to stop being so angry with me. And then we just wait for God to answer that prayer, which he totally can do. And he does do sometimes. But a lot of times God uses the answer to our prayer as a process for us to get better. For example, you want a better mark on better grade on your project? Work hard on it. If you want to have your mom not get mad at you, have you looked at how you acted at your mom? Are you honoring your mother and your father as the Bible tells us to? A lot of times Jesus will use us as part of his answer to our prayer. You have to be willing to be obedient. And a reminder, the way in which we often hear from God, it's the Bible. I say that all the time because it's so true. God uses his word to speak to you and to me. All right, so what do you think happens? Well, you know, Simon Peter lets down his nets and they catch fish. They don't just catch some fish though. They catch let's read it. So verses 6 and 7, they say, and this time their nets were so full of fish they began to tear. A shout for help brought their partners in the other boat, and soon both boats were filled with fish and on the verge of sinking. Can you imagine so many fish that A, you need to call for help, and B, it's sinking both ships? That's a lot of fish. But that's how our God works. God has so much to give us. He blesses us far more than we could ever imagine. In fact, there's a passage in the Bible that I love, and it says, my cup runneth over. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I drink a lot of water. And so when I go to a restaurant, this is an itty bitty cup. When I go to a restaurant, I'm often asking the waiter for water. Okay, you get some water, you drink it. Can I get some more water, please? Now, how would a waiter refill my cup? They'd probably give me, ooh, that's a lot. That's too much. They'd probably give me about what I need, right? I imagine if it was Jesus, he might do something like this. Is that enough? Let me just give you a little more. A little more. He gives us so much. Our cups run over. He has so much to give, guys, and he loves us so much. And what I love about this passage is that Peter had to call other people over to help. And I'd like to think that God gave Peter so much that it did not just bless Peter, but it blessed others as well. A lot of times when God answers our prayers, he does so in a way that it helps many. And so we see here a really cool story when Jesus knew Peter's needs, helped him by including him in the process, and gave him more than he could ever imagine. Which is a beautiful story, but it doesn't end there. In fact, the biggest takeaway from this story is that Peter then became a disciple of Jesus. Which means, in one translation it says he left everything and followed him. Guys, Jesus doesn't want us to treat him like a vending machine for our prayers. He loves to hear from us and he wants to answer our prayers, and he can and he will. But I don't want your relationship with God to just simply be, dear God, I need this. Oh, thanks. I'll call you back next time I need help. Peter didn't say that. He didn't say, hey, Jesus, thanks for helping me fish. I'll call you next time I can't find any. No. He followed Jesus. He left everything and he followed Jesus. He became a disciple of Jesus. And Peter went on to be a huge part of God's work here on earth. He was a disciple of Jesus, which means he followed him around, he learned from him, and you read a lot of stories about him, and Jesus used him to teach us a lot too. And then after Jesus went back up to heaven, Peter started the church that we're a part of today, the global church. And he's one of the first people to ever be a part of the church. And so Peter played a very important role in God's work here on earth. But he had to leave everything and follow Jesus. It's the same thing for you and me, guys. God doesn't just want a relationship with us where we ask him when we need things. He wants to have a relationship where we follow him, where we give up everything and we are obedient to him. Because guys, he has good plans for your lives. Very good plans for your lives, just as he had for Peter. But to know those plans, we need to walk in his way and be obedient to him. We need to be followers of Jesus. And so I pray, guys, that you will follow Jesus just like Peter did. Now in your families, I want you to talk about two things. Number one, a time when God answered a prayer or a need in your family. Parents, this is a great time to give a testimony to show your children God at work in your family. Did you need something and maybe you asked for it and maybe you didn't, and God answered that prayer? And did your family have to play a role in that? Did God call you to do anything in that? The second thing I want you to talk about is, what does it look like for you to follow Jesus? What does God want you to do to be a disciple, a follower of Him? Guys, God has good plans for you, and I pray that you will follow Him and live a life that brings Him glory. And that's the best life to live, I'm telling you. Guys, we love you, we miss you, we're praying for you. Now go and make a difference. Happy Father's Day. Bye.
We all have a story, a purpose you designed. Every day, every page written for me by the love of Jesus Christ. So listen up now. I'm living out loud.